Good day, students. This will be the continuation of our previous discussion on vector addition. We are already done discussing with collinear vectors or vectors along the same line or along the same axis. And we are also done discussing perpendicular vectors or vectors acting 90 degrees to each other. Now, what if we have vectors that are not along the axis? For example, just like this one, hindi siya along the x-axis, hindi din siya along the y-axis. In that case, we have non-collinear vectors and we are going to use component method. So these will be our objectives for this day. First, we are going to determine the horizontal and vertical components of a vector. And then second, we are going to solve for the resultant vector using component method. So how are we going to determine the horizontal and vertical components of a vector? So for example, we have a vector R. Yan. We have a vector R and it is at a certain angle. At certain angle. Let's call this theta. This one. That is the angle. How are we going to determine the horizontal and vertical components of that angle? We can determine its horizontal component. This is our horizontal component, and let us call that our x. X is horizontal, x-axis horizontal, and we have the ry or the vertical component. So ry is always the vertical component, rx is the horizontal component. How are we going to determine those components? Remember, this is a right triangle, right? Given the hypotenuse. At ang wala is yung adjacent side, wala yung adjacent, wala din yung opposite. Paano natin i-identify si adjacent and si opposite side given the angle and given the resultant of our vector? Okay? So, we remember the trigonometric functions, so, and then TOA. These are the functions. However, in this case, unknown si adjacent side and unknown din si opposite side. Ang given lang is yung theta at saka yung hypotenuse natin. So we cannot use TOA. Hindi natin pwede magagamit si TOA. Bakit hindi pwede magagamit si TOA? Kasi unknown yung dalawa. Unknown si adjacent side, unknown din si opposite side. Yun ang hahanapin natin eh. So that means we are going to use so, and then we will be using also the ta or the cosine. So what is so? So means, anong ibig sabihin ng so? So means sine of an angle. Sine of an angle is equal to the opposite side over the hypotenuse. Whereas ka is cosine of an angle is equal to the adjacent side divided by the hypotenuse. Ang unknown natin is yung opposite side and then yung adjacent side. Remember, the hypotenuse here is our resultant. Yan. Our vector. So we are going to change that into our resultant vector. Resultant vector. So, yeah. This is our R. Okay, this is our R. And so, if we are going to determine the opposite side, we are just going to cross multiply that, and that will give us opposite side is equal to R times sine theta. This is the formula. Opposite side is equal to R times sine theta. Now, to solve for the adjacent side, then adjacent side is just equal to R times cosine theta. Ako ha? So this will be our formulas na gagamitin natin to solve for the opposite side and to solve for the adjacent side. So if ever ang hahanapin natin is yung opposite side, then we are going to use R sine theta. If we are going to solve for the adjacent side, we will use R cosine theta. Tandaan lang yun ha. Opposite is sine. Adjacent is cosine. For example, we have this problem. Suppose Diwata 1, a Philippine microsatellite, is located 1,165 kilometers, 25.8 degrees east of north relative to the International Space Station. Determine its vertical and horizontal components of that vector. Let us write first the given. The given is, saan ko isusulat yung given? Dito na lang. The given is 1,165 kilometers, 25.8 degrees east of north. Yan yung given natin, 1,165 kilometers east of north. So, the first step is to plot that vector sa ating Cartesian plane. Magsisimula tayo sa kanyang direction. Take note of the direction. The direction is east of north, So that means our angle is attached along the north direction because that is of north. So dapat naka-attach sa north. Sumula sa north, papunta siya sa east. Sumula sa north, papunta sa east. Yan. That will be our direction. Ibig sabihin, this will be our vector. Yan. Ito yung vector natin. This is the 1,165 kilometers. Kasi this is east of north. So that means naka-attach siya dapat sa north. The next step is to draw a right triangle. That's the goal. The goal is to draw a right triangle na dapat nasa loob ang ating angle. Dapat nasa loob si angle. So ibig sabihin, huwag kang mag-draw dito ng right triangle. Bakit? Kasi dapat nasa loob ang ating angle. So dapat dito tayo mag-draw ng ating right triangle. Dapat nasa loob ang ating angle. We will identify next our horizontal and our vertical components. What is horizontal component? The horizontal component is your Rx. Tama? Saan ba dito yung horizontal? Our horizontal is this one. Tama? Ito yung naka-horizontal. O, tingnan mo yan, horizontal. So this will be our Rx. Now, how about our Ry? Saan dito ang ating Ry? Our Ry is our vertical component. Ito, vertical. Vertical. V. Varug. So, vertical. So, this will be our Ry. So, Rx, horizontal. Ry, vertical. The next step is to identify the opposite side and the adjacent side. Saan ba dito yung opposite side natin at saka yung adjacent side? Si Rx. Ang Rx ba natin opposite side or adjacent side? Rx is our opposite side. Bakit opposite side? Because kaharap siya ng angle natin. Remember, this is our angle. So, kapag kaharap niya ng angle, that means that is our opposite side. Now, that means Ry is our adjacent side. So, ito yung adjacent natin. Adjacent side, si Ry. Nakuha? So, Rx opposite, Ry adjacent side. So, we are going to determine to calculate for the horizontal and vertical components. Let's start first with Rx for our horizontal component. Remember that Rx is opposite. Tama? Yun, no? Opposite. Opposite. So that means, remember yung formula natin for opposite? Opposite is R times sine theta. So that means, Rx must be equal to R times sine theta. Opposite kasi siya. So that means we will substitute all the values. R is 1,165 kilometers times sine. What is our angle? Our theta. Our angle is 25.8. So 25.8 degrees. Ako ha? So calculate that one. So i-calculate natin yan. 1,165 times sine 25.8. And that will give us That will give us 507.04 and so on kilometers. Remember, we will follow the rules of significant figures. And since that is multiplication, that means we need how many significant figures? We need 3 significant figures kasi least yung 3. So that means our Rx is 507 kilometers, our horizontal component. Nakuha? 507 kilometers. Now, let's proceed to our Ry. Ry tayo. So, since Ry is the adjacent side, tingnan dito, adjacent yung Ry natin. So, that means Ry is equal to, ano ba yung gagamitan natin basta adjacent? Adjacent is cos. Or, since sine na ang ginamit mo dito, that means dito, cosine. So, R cosine theta. R is 1,165 kilometers times cosine of 25.8 degrees. And that will give you, anong ibibigay niyan? So, this is, wait lang ha. 1,165 times cosine 25.8. That will give you 1,048.87 unit is kilometers. So again, we will follow the rules of significant figures. So that means kailangan lang natin is 3. So our final answer will be Ry, 3 significant figures. So si 1, si 0, and si 4. Since that is 8, so this will become 5. Dagdag ka ng 0 as placeholder, kilometers. So that's it. Those are the horizontal and vertical components of our vectors. Okay? Let's have another example. Determine the components of a vector. So first we have 1,750 miles, 60.1 degrees north of east. So first is, we are going to draw a Cartesian plane. So gawa tayo ng Cartesian plane. For example, this is our Cartesian plane. And then, we are going to plot our vector sa ating Cartesian plane. Ang first is, identify natin yung direction. That is of east. So, ibig sabihin, saan tayo magsisimula? Saan naka-attach yung ating angle? Sa east. So, dito naka-attach ang ating angle at papunta siya sa north. So, yan. From east to north because that is north of east. So, ibig sabihin, this will be our vector. Yan. Okay? That will be our vector. Next is to draw a right triangle na dapat nasa loob ang ating angle. Take note ha, dapat nasa loob si angle. So, ibig sabihin, huwag kang gagawa ng right triangle dito. Dito na side. Kasi dapat nasa loob si angle. So, dapat dito tayo gagawa ng ating right triangle. So, dito. Okay? So, meron na tayong right triangle na dapat nasa loob ang ating angle. Nakuha? Next, we will identify saan dito si Rx, saan dito si Ry. Remember, Rx is horizontal and Ry is vertical. So how about this one? Is this horizontal or vertical? Of course, this is vertical. So this is our Ry. Nakuha? Now, where is our Rx? Titingnan lang natin saan dyan yung horizontal side. So dito. Yan. Ayun. This is our Rx, our horizontal component. Nakuha? So Rx and Ry. Next is to identify saan dyan yung opposite side at saan dyan yung adjacent side. So yung opposite side natin dito, si Rx. Ano ba si Rx? Opposite, adjacent. Rx is our adjacent side. Bakit adjacent? Because that is the side na naka-attach yung ating angle. And Ry is our opposite side. Ry is our opposite side. Hindi katulad ng kanina ha. Kanina si Rx yung opposite, si Ry yung adjacent. Ngayon, si Ry na naman yung opposite, si Rx yung adjacent. Depende yan kung saan yung nakalocate ang ating angle. So let us try to solve first Rx. Solve muna natin si Rx. Since Rx is our adjacent side, ano ba yung formula kapag adjacent? So Rx is equal to R times cosine theta because that is adjacent. R is 1,750 miles times cosine of our angle. Our angle is 60.1 degrees. And that will give us 1,750 times cosine 60.1. That will give us 872.35 and so on kilometers. Now remember, this is multiplication. That means we are going to follow the rules, which is least significant figures. So ano ba yung least significant figures natin? Tatlo from 60.1. At saka tatlo man din yung 1,750. So that means our final answer must only contain 3 significant figures. So Rx is equal to 872 kilometers. 3 significant figures. Now, how about our Ry? Since our Ry is the opposite side, that means we are going to use the formula Ry is equal to R sine theta. Kasi opposite siya. Sine man kapag ka-opposite. So that means 1,750 miles times sine 60.1 degrees. And that will give us what? Ano sagot niyan? That is 1,750 times sine 60.1. That will give us 1,517. 1,517.06 and so on. And take note, we are going to follow the rules of significant figures. And since that is multiplication, least. So that means our final answer must only contain 3 significant figures. So that means our Ry is equivalent to 1,520 kilometers. Kasi hanggang 1 dapat. And that is 7, so round up. So that will be our horizontal and vertical components. Okay? Nakuha na? So yun lang, ganun lang ang gagawin natin. Try to solve that on your own and comment in the section below ano yung horizontal and vertical components ng ating vectors. Okay?